Need link building or content? Go to fatjoe.com. On-demand marketing services for agencies and teams. Fat Joe.
Right, well, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk to you about Magento, which is one of the biggest e-commerce platforms out there. We're going to run through 50 quite quick fire tips. Some of them are going to be really specific to Magento, but there should hopefully be a lot general to e-commerce overall that you guys will be able to take away with you. So to begin with, my name is Kestra Walker. I'm the Senior SEO Strategist at PushON, and here with me is Sam.
Yep, Sam Rutley, Managing Director of PushON, and we're an e-commerce consultancy. We do build and marketing. We've been working with Adobe Commerce or Magento open source, as it was formerly, as the free version is known, for about a decade, and we're a Google and Adobe partner. These are a few of the clients that we work with.
So before we get into it, I just wanted a quick show of hands. I know audience participation isn't always a fan favorite, but I just want to start off with how many of you have actually worked with a Magento site before? Hands up. Okay, that's a good lot of you. Who's currently working on a Magento site? Okay, and who never has, but might be considering something like that in the future? Okay, so we might have like a lot of different skill levels here, so hopefully there's something for all of you to take away. So now we're going to jump into these 50 tips, starting off with the Magento platform as a whole.
So it's really important that you maintain your Magento or Adobe Commerce platform. It's something that Magento has had a bit of a bashing about because there's been so many updates and releases, but Adobe, since they've acquired Magento, have actually stripped back the core platform and made it so that you don't need to update as regularly as possible because they release security-only patches. So, for example, if you're on 2.4.4, which is the most recently supported version, it'll be supported all the way through to April 2025, so you don't need to do any major or minor updates for the next year and a bit, 2 years. You should leverage the platform, and we'll talk about this quite a bit. A lot of people buy tools, tick the box, and then don't use the tools, and that's a really common thing that we see. People don't use the functionality they're given, so things like dynamic content blocks, abandoned carts, a lot of stuff that's out of the box with Adobe Commerce or Magento open source, people just don't use them, so you should really leverage that, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail shortly.
Next, we're going to talk about page speed and core web vitals. These are some Brighton SEO buzzwords here. A lot of this is going to be stuff that you know, but it's really important to reiterate. First of all, make sure you're keeping your images lean. An e-commerce site is going to be stuffed full with images, so make sure you're optimizing these where you can. Only use as many as you need, and where you can, convert to WebP. With Magento, something like Fastly can help you accommodate this. And if you want to get into the technicals further, chat to your devs and look at dropping the alpha band and automatically injecting the source set. Look into lazy load as well. This is really going to reduce the overall load time of your pages, and a Masty Page Speed Optimizer is a great way to add this feature to your site. And don't forget about your background images. This can really be overlooked, but lazy loading those can save off a lot of time. Video optimization is another really important one. We love video content on the internet at the moment, so make sure you're prioritizing the best way of adding it to your site. Are you hosting it on the site itself, which Magento can accommodate, or are you looking to embed it via something like YouTube or Vimeo? So whatever is going to be the best option for you and your users, and will keep your pages quick. Also, make sure you're prioritizing the script execution. Use things like preload so that the required assets are always there, and utilize stuff like defer and async attributes so you can control when things are downloading and when things are executing in relation to your HTML. Also, look at compression tools such as gzip, so you're keeping the overall page weight as lean as possible. And make sure you're reducing that cumulative layout shift where you can. An e-commerce site is going to be filled with things like images. If you're using dynamic content, that will be there. Embeds, all sorts of things, and these will impact your CLS score. So tame it with things such as adding explicit width and height attributes, utilize rel equals preload, and optimize your dynamic content so it's not shunting the page around when it loads. Put it after all of your key things on it so people aren't seeing the pages shift. One thing you're going to have to get really comfortable with on Magento is caching. It's going to be really helpful to improve the performance of your website, but when you do use it a lot, you can see things kind of get out of sync with each other, which can cause potential issues. So learn when to optimally flush the cache, which is kind of resetting things, but also make sure you're doing something called warming the cache. So when you're developing and when you're deploying, you can essentially send a form of a crawler around the site to cache everything initially so that when a live user hits it, they're not having to do it themselves. And with an e-commerce site, especially these large ones, it is going to be slow. It just happens. So make sure you are mitigating that everywhere you can. Look into local hosting options. Remove all of the dead weight from your theme and your extensions that you might not need. Utilize the cache. We cannot emphasize this enough. And keep the website patched and updated. So next up, we're going to run through some code and performance tips.
So as Kestra mentioned previously, Magento, Adobe Commerce comes with a lot of JavaScript, and it makes the platform quite bloated, but actually a lot of that JavaScript is included on every single page when it's not necessary. So you should strip it back, bundle it, and defer it using the async tag if required. And a lot of third-party modules, one of the beauties of Magento open source Adobe Commerce is that there's loads of third-party extensions you can just plug in and use, but a lot of these extensions come with bloated JavaScript, which is included on every page. So a good example of that is like the postcode anywhere module, or locate as it's now known. That includes the JavaScript on every single page, even though the postcode lookup isn't required on every page. So we've actually built a module that removes it from the home page, for example, to improve your page speed scores. If you want to talk about that, we've got a stand, or you can talk to us afterwards. But yeah, remove third-party JavaScript, analyze the modules that you've got. And also generate critical CSS. So critical CSS is the CSS required for that first bit of the page load above the fold. If you load that first, the user will have a much better experience. They'll see the page load, and then the rest of the page below the fold will start to load afterwards once the page has been fully rendered. And minify your code as well. So there's modules like Amnesty Page Speed Optimizer, which will do this for you. So just install that module, switch on minify, and it'll do the job for you.
Great. So next, I'm going to talk through some site structure wins you need to be looking at with your site. In particular, especially on any e-commerce site, your sitemap is going to be really key. So out of the box, Magento is only going to support your product pages and your category pages in the sitemap. So in order to add your CMS pages, so these are your about, your contact us, all of those tertiary pages your site really needs, you need to have additional functionality through a third-party module to configure those. And in general, any large e-commerce site is going to want to look into third-party sitemap modules because there's a lot of functionality you need to be in control of, such as the size of your sitemaps, the number of URLs within them, and even splitting them out per category or page type can be really easy for you to then manage the crawl budget of your site overall. And if the sitemap is obviously the map to the site, the robots.txt is something like the highway code here. So make sure you're managing what bots can crawl when they visit your site. So disallow the catalog search pages. These are your internal search, your admin, your backend, your accounts, your carts. These are all the run-of-the-mill things. And add in plans for your parameter URLs should they come in through faceted navigation or things like that. But make sure you're not disallowing your paginated pages as well. This is super easy to overlook if you're using the same attributes for everything. And if you have a localized site, so using like ENGB to highlight that, a subfolder, make sure you are accounting for that in your robots.txt file as well. With an e-commerce site as well, just the nature of it, you're going to get duplication on there, which we want to try combat as much as possible. So try to preempt this where you can. Utilize that robots.txt, but also talk to your developers to see if you can kill things at the root if pages are being generated where they don't need to be. And unfortunately with Magento, canonicals aren't out of the box. You're going to have to implement those yourself through a third-party module. We have built one, so if you'd like to talk about that, do come find us. And with your canonicals, make sure they are working with pagination as well. There's a couple of diagrams here, which I'm not going to go into, but you'll have the slides after. But there's some great articles out there from Luma and on Search Engine Journal if you want to explore that more. Also, keep your URLs friendly, search-friendly, user-friendly. So a quirk of Magento is it will have .html on all URLs out of the box. So account for that in your plans. Do you want it there? Do you want to remove it? And whichever you choose, make sure your redirects also account for that in the overall structure. With Magento in particular, we do recommend disabling these category product URLs as they can kind of inflate things. It can get a bit messy as you do scale, so bear that in mind. So we've touched on faceted nav a few times. It's a great strength of Magento. It's a wonderful thing for all e-commerce sites to be using. Just make sure you're monitoring those strong facets. If all of your users or a large proportion of them are going to certain facets all the time, you need to have a real indexable page there. So make sure you're creating those and then fulfilling those long-tail queries. And Amnesty has modules that can help you fill the gap in that functionality there. So next up, we're going to run through some content tips.
One really powerful piece of functionality that Adobe Commerce has is the segmentation suite, and a lot of customers don't use this. So you can create segments and you can target those segments with specific content, specific promotions, really drive value for those customers. And you should also make use of the content staging functionality, so you can set up, as marketers, you can set up marketing campaigns well in advance. You don't, with a lot of platforms, you have to go in at midnight, change some banners if you've got Black Friday promotion. With Adobe Commerce, you can schedule those updates months in advance, get approval from your line manager, the marketing team, whoever it is you've got to get sign off from, and schedule them for update, and hopefully not have to stay up till midnight to manage your content. You should add reviews and user-generated content, so partners like Yotpo, Trustpilot, really easy to integrate into the site, and they add trust and authority, especially if your website is not a commonly known brand. They really add some value and weight in terms of getting additional conversion. And then schema, so out the box, Magento has product schema on the site, but it doesn't include things like review schema, organization, site links, search and all those sort of things. So there are modules that support this, but you might need to tweak them for your specific product set. And blogs, so historically, people used to install WordPress alongside Magento open source to get blogging functionality, but Adobe actually released Magento Page Builder for open source, and that means that we can really push integrated blog modules such as Amnesty Blog Pro or Headworks have a really good blog module, and you can actually have one single platform where your blog and your e-commerce site live together.
Great, so next I'm going to run us through some UX tips. And as you may have realized, Magento does have a few common functional gaps that you will need to address should you be working with that platform. So whilst there is faceted nav, look into improving the filtering with third parties, look into adding sorting modules so you can sort by best sellers, highest rated, things like that. If you need additional rules on your cart so you can introduce like discounting abilities, that will need to be supported with a third-party module, and as we've established, the blog as well. Make sure you're looking at your checkout and staying on top of this. How can you reduce friction? How can you improve the conversion rate? At every step of it as well, from baskets to checkout, all of the payment options. What can you do to improve this overall conversion? And look at leveraging the live chat. This doesn't really need to be on every page, popping up constantly. This can be really annoying to a user. So look into how to trigger it at the optimal times. Has a user run into an error that you now need to try help them out with? Or have they fulfilled a specific set of rules that you've already laid out, and then the chat is useful to pop up at that stage to kind of push that conversion over the edge? Make sure you're merchandising those categories effectively as well. It's no good if someone lands on a product category and those first products are all sold out or unavailable for whatever reason. So set up automatic sorting rules that can allow those products that are going to bring you the most value, that are going to be optimized for user habits or CRO right at the top. And likewise, look into optimizing that internal search. This is going to give you really valuable insights into what your users are doing once they land on your site. What are they searching? Track that data in something like GA, or if you do use a third-party search tool like Algolia, for example, they'll have data there as well that you can rely on. And create the pages that you need to create based on that data, or look into adding search aliases and synonyms, which Sam is going to talk about a bit more as we run through some CRO tips.
So as Kestra just mentioned, internal site search, really important. A lot of users come to your site. If you've got a large catalog, first thing they're going to do is search. So we look at it from an optimization perspective. Make sure you add in synonyms and aliases. One of the big tips we've got is if you've got a category set up for a search term, say like somebody search for jeans, redirect them to the jeans category page rather than the search results page, because you should be putting effort into merchandising that jeans category page. You should always have your best sellers at the top, the ones with the highest margin, the ones with the highest stock at the top. And you won't have done that in search. You probably won't have merchandised your search as well as you should do. Your category pages you will do, so they'll have a higher conversion value. And grow the basket. So when the user adds a product to the cart, provide recommendations immediately. What complementary products could they purchase? What related products could they purchase? How could you upsell to them? How can you add additional items to the basket? And then in the actual checkout itself, if there's free shipping over a certain value, provide hints. If somebody's got £40 in the cart and the free shipping is £50, provide a prompt to say, spend £10 more. Here are some items you could spend £10 more on to get free shipping, and increase that average basket size. And then look at personalizing the site. So with Adobe Commerce, you've got Adobe Sensei product recommendations that comes as part of your commerce license. With Magento open source, you've got Nosto Fresh Relevance, various other tools. Look at how you use AI and data to provide recommendations to customers alongside the customer segmentation suite.
So next, I'm going to run us through some PWA tips, as Magento is a great option to put your PWA on. And I must admit, when PushON first told me that we were building a PWA, I was worried, as PWA SEO is a different ballgame. There's a whole host of new things that we have to be considering. But one thing you need to be hyper aware of with this is what is going in the DOM. Ensure all of that key content is accessible right away so that when search engines land on it, they can see it. And this means that dev and client communications are really, really important. Ask the silly questions if you're not sure, talk to the right people, and make sure everyone knows why this is so important. And this has been mentioned at previous Brighton SEOs, but do not trust the screenshot in Search Console or rich snippet tools, etc. Look at the actual code that that tool is giving you, and if you're not sure if the key content is in there, share that with your developer and let them check as well and let you know. With PWAs, you want to make sure you're using server-side rendering, so all of that important content right away is already loaded, your URLs, your canonicals, your metadata. And if you are migrating to a PWA, make sure that you are pre-rendering those redirects so that they are all ready and available for when search engines and your users hit the site. If they follow through those URLs, they'll get there. This can take a lot of time, so don't leave it to say what you normally would for a typical migration. Give yourself double that, honestly, so you're not rushing around. We've noticed with PWAs during the build stage, the status codes can get a bit wobbly, so use whatever your crawling tools are to double check this. Make sure your 404 pages are serving 404s. Make sure your 200 status pages are serving a 200 status, because these have been mixed up and you don't want to go live without that being fixed. So next up are some tips about internationalization.
Shout out to Pre-Render, who are also a sponsor. Great tool for pre-rendering. So with Adobe Commerce, Magento open source, you can create storefronts. These could be different brands, language variations of the same website, and you can localize them to the audience. So for example, a client that sells diapers or nappies, localize that content to the audience. Make sure that the customer is not thinking this item's going to get shipped from the UK when actually it's going to get shipped from the US. Make sure you localize that content. Similarly, localize your payment methods. So there's certain payment methods that are more popular in certain countries and territories. For example, Germany, much more bank transfer, ELV, those sort of payment methods versus the UK. China, they have their own specific mobile payment methods. So make sure you're looking at, if you're in internationalization, make sure you're looking at localized payment methods. And hreflang is obviously really important from an SEO perspective. Tell the search engines what content they should serve in which country. And again, this isn't supported out the box by Magento, Adobe, but we've built a module, it's a common theme here, that adds this functionality in because we've come across this scenario so many times. There's also other modules out there that cover off this functionality.
So I'm going to run us through some paid media tips as well when working with Magento, as it's really important for your SEO team and your paid team to be working together. So one of the things you need to nail is getting your feed correct. As incorrect configuration, it can lead to disproved products. Something we recommend for handling this within Magento is the Wiremind Data Feed Manager. This is a really good option as it's dynamic. It can automatically update to where you're sending your feed, and you can preview things. And another good win for paid in terms of Magento is it can house a really high number of SKUs, like a huge amount of products on there, which means you can market your entire catalog really effectively. And when it comes to remarketing, we know that the cost of user acquisition is increasing, so it's really important that you're able to remarket effectively and keep those users and start building that lifetime value. So I've got a few tips on analytics in Magento as well. So make sure you're tracking your e-commerce events on Magento. So normal analytics, just adding your GA code in, is really simple, but doing your purchase events, your add to cart events and so forth, if you want to handle that in GTM, that's great. But if you want a plugin that can help add that functionality to the site, we really recommend Anawave. And they have a GA4 plugin as well that can help translate all of these events if you're in the middle of doing your migrations to GA4. Running out of time on that front. And finally, we've got a few tips around email.
Yeah, so as Kestra mentioned, cost of acquisition is really high. Acquiring a new customer, you want to squeeze the lifetime value out of it. So once you've brought a customer into your platform, you want to integrate remarketing tools such as .digital, Klaviyo, Map, other tools are available, and start to build that lifetime value. You've got their data, start pushing content to them. Some of that might be welcome series, abandoned carts, abandoned browse, abandoned SMS. There's loads of different ways of marketing to these customers through email and other channels.
And the final tip we have for you as marketers is to be involved with that e-commerce website from every step that you can. Be there when they're speccing it out, when they're designing it and building it, and obviously all the way through to testing, launch, and maintenance, as you have so much advice to give to them, and it can't be overlooked. Build it right first time, otherwise it's just going to be constantly putting out fires once things have launched. So get in the room, ask the questions, communicate with all of the key stakeholders, and we promise, talking to developers, talking to clients, they won't bite, it will benefit everyone overall. So thank you, we've been PushON. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Need link building or content? Go to fatjoe.com. On-demand marketing services for agencies and teams. Fat Joe.